Welcome to the Wolverine lifestyle. My name is Dylan Andres, and today I got something I got to work through. And you're more than welcome to be a fly on the wall while I go through this process. I was posed with a bit of a question over the last few days due to an experiment that I ran on myself of removing social media from my phone. And the question I was posed with was, what if we don't have a productivity problem? What if it's a consumption problem? You see, I am one of those individuals, maybe much like yourself, that likes to consume information. I love to learn. I love to learn new things, especially when it's things that I want to be learning about. And I'm often one of those ones that falls down some sort of shorts or reels rabbit hole. And before I know it, 30, 40, 60 minutes have gone by, and it was like I was lost in a vortex, left with this subtle guilt and shame of what feels like wasted time, even if the content that I was consuming was on the foundation of trying to learn something new. 7 days ago, I was in the mindset of trying to just separate myself from this, trying to get whatever control I could. And this brought up the thought of going back to a flip phone. And when I had that thought, it actually brought a lot of peace. It brought a lot of relief, seeking relief, which might be another topic of a conversation, but that pursuit of relief in life is also a very prevalent one I have noticed. Anyways, I really sat and contemplated if going back to a flip phone like back when I was 16 years old was the play. And there were moments where that felt like a full embodied fuck yes, like just removing all the distractions. Creating all the hoops for myself to jump through if I ever felt the need to do that again. And then I realized, as a business owner, having a smartphone is actually very convenient. So it'd be much more conducive to just learn how to control myself, and whatever that looks like. I decided to do a little bit of research on minimalist apps, and after a handful of minutes of doing some research, I found an app that seemed to fit the bill. And I don't know if it was ironic or sheer coincidence, but the day that I had found it, I'm pretty sure it was last Wednesday. It happened to be on a real sick deal, like $25 for the year. And I looked at that and I'm like, well, that's not a loss. Even if I use it for a month or two just to try it out, I didn't really see that as a loss. I could only see that as a gain. So I gave it a try. And as I was going through the app and making the settings and creating all of these barricades and boundaries for myself, there were moments of discomfort, moments of fear of not wanting to block Instagram or Facebook, and creating these justifications and mental gymnastics on why I should keep it, especially with something like Facebook, because I'm a marketplace fanatic. I love finding a good deal. I'm a thrifter as well. I don't know, it's like a game for me. And that's where I realized is that this was all part of the problem. It was still consumption. I decided to just start with a 7-day block and just to see what happens by removing something that I no longer see a value, yet still created justifications to myself to partake in or consume or whatever. The first day, I noticed that I kept going to tap my phone a lot, checking the screen, checking notifications, seeing, what posts were liked, if there was comments, what my friends were doing. And then I had to stop myself. And just in counting how many times I went to tap, I averaged it out. And let's say if Sometimes I would tap the phone and I'd look at the notification and I would just leave it alone. And other times I would check the notification and then all of a sudden find myself scrolling some feed, wasting moments of precious time. And I decided to average it out about, every time you touch the screen, let's say 5 minutes. And, maybe that sounds like a lot to you. And at first it sounded like a lot to me too, until I started using an app timer, and then I really realized how fast 5 minutes goes when you're just doom scrolling. So after I started playing with this, I realized, holy shit, I'm spending way too much time just looking at the screen of my phone. And just that realization enough alone, by day 2, I stopped checking. I stopped tapping the screen. I stopped looking for the notifications, mainly because I knew those apps were blocked. But the feeling, that need to check, just really wasn't there anymore. And it was crazy that it only took a day or 2 for this to happen. I sat with this because other aspects of my life started to get stirred up as well. Over the last handful of months, I've had numerous conversations with my girlfriend about how first thing in the morning, often I wake up in a state of fight or flight, and I have no idea why. I just knew that as soon as my eyes opened, I was already irritable. Listening to my dog whine to go pee, something that never bothered me before, all of a sudden was just like nails on a chalkboard. Listening to my girlfriend's cat meow because he's hungry was like banging my head against a wall. Like seriously, something so minuscule, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that feeling because I love both of these animals and I don't want their needs and how they communicate to me their needs. I don't want that to be a source of frustration. Like that's just crazy in my mind. 3 days in, my morning irritability started to come down. And that's when I realized more of how much consumption I do, not just from social media, because social media was just the first step. Is doing the consumption, I would get the dopamine hit. And then after tapping that screen so many times to check, it wouldn't matter what was going on social media because it was like that. It was just fried out. It was done. So even though I was still habitually checking for social media, because that was my ground level baseline, I would then seek out dopamine in other areas of my life in not the best or the most healthiest of ways. For example, binge eating at night, maybe consuming a little bit too much TV at a time that I probably could have been using it for something better, like sleep or reading or just spending quality time in conversation with my girlfriend. And so over the past 7 days, that's what I focused on. And this little app timer was giving me my consumption rate, and I can see it every day going down and down and down and down. And not only that, whenever I did decide to consume, what I was consuming was different. And what I mean by that was before, it was anything from entertaining videos like cats and dogs or personal development or what's going on in the world. Yet the algorithm, I realized, was always feeding me something of fear, something of uncertainty, something of scarcity. And so that would suck me into all of these other places that I would find myself like in the thick of it, but not actually wanting to consume. Over the last 7 days, any of the times I did choose to consume, whether or not it be, YouTube long form content, it was actually very applied knowledge. It was information that was actually going to enhance other areas of my life. And when I was able to, once I turned off that clock, and I turned off that timer, my cutoff, I was done. That was it. I was fulfilled. It wasn't social media stealing my time. It was social media stealing these little micro moments. These moments where I was sitting in a waiting room, these moments where I was, sitting in a parking lot waiting for someone, walking my dog, even just having a shower. When I was doom scrolling on social media, I would find ways to interject having headphones on or listening to a speaker. And all those moments used to be hours. Because if we're constantly consuming, when are we supposed to create? And that has been something that has been bothering me in my life the last 6 months, is I've been struggling to create. Now, granted, I'm coming out of recovering from a torn Achilles, so not a whole lot that I can do. Was feeling pretty down on myself. I can talk about that whole situation in a different video episode. The reality is I created this bad habit of consumption for myself due to coming off of this injury. Those moments in between, there's a reason why they're called shower thoughts. How are we supposed to acquire a valuable shower thought if every moment we are in the shower, we are consuming a podcast or music or a YouTube video in the background? For the last couple years, I have felt very stuck in my life. I've been doing the things, but not seeing the progress that I have been hoping for. And the reality is because I've done substantially more consumption instead of creation. And when I'm talking creation, I'm not just talking the entrepreneurial things. I'm not just talking business things. I'm also talking like expression, art. I took up candle making. I bought a whole bunch of this big kits on how to make candles, and I've only used it a small handful of times because I just created justifications and excuses for myself to not do it, even though when I did, I enjoyed my time. Same thing for baking. I've taken up a liking to baking. A dear friend of mine gifted me a countertop mixer, and I loved using that thing. And now I justify and create these mental gymnastics to myself as to how I don't have time to do those things, even though when I was doing them, it created a sense of fulfillment. And the main thing that I can chalk this up to is my overconsumption. Over the last 7 days, I have reduced the consumption on my phone by almost a couple hours a day. And that might sound a lot, but when I drive, I listen to things and stuff like that. Each day, it's getting less and less because I've been choosing to drive in silence every once in a while. I've been choosing to walk in silence. How when I take my dog for a walk now, I don't even bring my phone with me. If I am constantly consuming, when do I have time to create? I realized that this consumption was not just for the sake of consumption. It was also adding to this victim story I was telling myself of not having enough time. So the consumption ended up being a self-fulfilling prophecy because it consumed so many micro moments throughout the day that when it added together, it was an egregious amount. Even if a good chunk of it was beneficial, information taking in, listening to a really good educational podcast or a YouTube video. And here's the thing. I'm not saying that all consumption is bad. I'm saying I know for myself, I need a hell of a lot more moderation. I need a little bit have more control over myself. But the overarching theme that I have learned, what I have noticed now on days, it's Friday now. Holy crap. So I'm on day 9. Day 9 now. What I have noticed is throughout the entirety of my day, my anxiety is lower. When your phone is sitting on your desk or sitting on the counter and it vibrates or it calls and you immediately get that shoot up your system and you're like, oh, what am I in trouble for this time? Yeah, I get it. That is not a fun feeling, and that is not supposed to be a reality of life. That is a overstimulated nervous system response. That is constantly living in fight or flight. That's where I was. This far in now, less anxiety, less fear. And you know what's cool? I don't know anything that's going on in the world. Nothing. Unless my friends actually tell me, I have no idea what's going on in politics. I have no idea where our government is sending money that they shouldn't be sending. I have no idea, none of it. My life is still operating just the same as it did, except for it feels better with less resistance. As opposed to my attention being out there with other people. And yes, of course, when there's bad things happening in the world, my heart goes to those people. But my heart has to go to me first. I need to make sure that my attention is directed at me so I can fill my cup first. Because if my cup's not full, how am I supposed to pour from it? So if I'm living my life in fear and anxiety every day because of what I'm being told is in the world, and it's starting to paint that perception that the world is an ugly place, how is that supposed to be conducive for me to build? I don't see it. The math is not mathing for me. So what started off as a 7-day trial to remove social media from my phone turned to be indefinite. I am not in a position where removing my smart device is going to be conducive to my life, because I like having a GPS readily available, and I like being able to, I have random questions, those random shower thought questions like, do penguins have knees? Sometimes I like to just pull out my phone and quickly search it up because I want that answer answered, or that question answered. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. What I found was, though, is just the removal of social media, or at least most of the social media. I mean, keep one, but I had all of them. I decided to keep YouTube because there's a lot of really good information on there. Really good information where I can type in exact questions and get exact answers to the curiosities that I have. Instagram and Facebook were not like that. Once upon a time, they were a database of, it was a place where I could go and connect with old friends and family, people who I haven't seen or heard from in years. And now I go on there and over a third of what's sent to me is an ad from somebody I don't even know. I'm being sold something, whether or not it's a product or an ideology or some sort of fear to create separation and division in the world. And I just don't have time for it anymore. After 7 days, I have learned that for myself, not for all, this is not a rule, this is for myself. Social media, or having immediate direct access to social media at any given time, is definitely not the play. And so what this opened up for me was the understanding that sometimes when we want to achieve a goal of some sorts, it's not adding more things to the plate, it's removing. I have gained hours back in my day. That's right, I said hours. I do regret to be informing that a little bit. However, that is the truth. And, integrity is an important thing. It's hard for us to admit to ourselves. I'm sure it's hard for you to admit to yourself too, how much consumption we actually do as humans. We live in a society right now that is built on consumption. So moving forward, this little 7-day experiment opened up my eyes that sometimes just the smallest micro transitions we make in our life, just the smallest changes can make the world of a difference. I'm 7 days in. I can't imagine what life is going to be on day 30, 60, 90, 120, a year. If I'm losing 1 hour, let's just for a round number say 1 hour a day due to bullshit doom scrolling, that's 360 hours a year I gain back. Even if I'm not doing something productive, even if I'm just using that time for peace, for sitting in silence, for going for extra walks, for reading a book, my nervous system is going to substantially be in gratitude in comparison to what it has been in the previous handful of months. This was my lesson for the week. I have the power to control certain things in my life, and I don't have the power to control other things in my life. And by that, I mean, I have the power to control my choices. And when I choose to consume with a brain that's turned off, I am choosing something outside of myself. And this realization has caused so much freedom. It has caused the beginning of the lightness in my step that I have been craving. Thank you for walking through with me on this. Until next time, I hope you have the best day.